So when it comes to season one or before, without question, it's one of those films which start off good, has a bunch of potential, ends on a pretty decent note, but in the middle you're just like, what the hell happened? So to summarize, this is the season. Eli Adler is nearing the end of his career when an associate named Gail asks him to help with a case that she has involving a boy named Noah. Now, being that Eli has long worked with children, especially in the psychiatric field, he is perhaps the most qualified, and adding that, well, within a year of his wife Lynn dying, it was originally thought that this would be the perfect case for him to have something to do to take him off of his grief. However, over the course of 10 episodes, we learn Noah's case is far from normal, and honestly, as you watch Eli try to treat Noah as a patient, you may find yourself questioning how did Eli not lose his license as he's trying to treat hallucinations, these symptoms that Noah has that has him sometimes getting cold and turning blue, and a bunch of other things, which include this question of how Noah and Eli might be more connected than we know, and whether or not Eli might be responsible for his wife's suicide. So, getting to the review section, the sole unfortunate highlight when it comes to before is that it starts off good with all the potential it presents us, and it ends on a fairly good note. In the beginning, you're looking at Billy Crystal, Judith Light, Rosie Perez. They're all in something that we don't see too many of them in often, in terms of not only this being a drama, but one that has psychological elements, and then there's some fantasy elements because of what's haunting Noah. So something really against type when it comes to them. And on top of that, when you look at Eli as a psychiatrist, you're seeing a man who is treating children, which allows some form of empathy, some sense of vulnerability that we don't often see with male leads. And then add on an additional layer that we're told that Lynn's character committed suicide, and you're kind of questioning why did that happen? What's the background with that? Especially since Eli might be in therapy for it, but he's often very avoidant of really going into that topic. Then when you flip things toward the end presents what if it was built up to better, which could have been something more satisfying as it connects all the dots. It answers most questions, not all questions, and it makes it so if this ends up being a one-season show, depending on how much grace or forgiveness you're willing to get, you could say it was decent. Maybe rough, very rough in the middle, but it began good and ended good. But when it comes to that middle part, there's two main issues that really messed up the show. One is the fact that it had constant cliffhangers, which for a show that's weekly, it's understandable, especially on Apple TV Plus, because it has a few hit programs on the network, but it's not something like Netflix where there's something potentially new every week that could shake things up. It's much more curated, or less focused on doing something every week. So when it comes to anything released, it needs to have that weekly churn of something new coming out that's people are already committed to. But the problem when it comes to before is that these cliffhangers are literal cliffs. And instead of you jumping and flying, kind of gracing down to whatever's next, instead you're doing a straight up nosedive. So each episode builds up to something good, falls off, and you're doing that build up all over again. And for the last slow point, it's that, and I know it's never good to really think about what could have been done or what could have been in general, but taking note of the season finale, you see so much that could have been used in order to build up to it so much better. For example, Eli is someone who's very much against spiritualism or the afterlife, and yet his granddaughter, Sophie, talks about Lynn speaking through her. On top of that, we see Eli going to therapy for the beginning part, and in my mind, they could have really expanded things between Sophie and Eli so that they could have had family therapy, and they could have included Barbara and go more into her childhood and their relationship, and really expanded on why Eli thinks the way he does, the way he was as a father, the way he was as a husband, a little bit more, besides kind of painting a picture that Eli is the type who good at his job, good with kids who's not related to, but in terms of his personal relationships, especially the ones where it's not friends, especially with men, eh. And I would even add in, because he's also somebody who kind of evolves on the topic toward the end when it comes to what science can and cannot explain. There's again an additional level of stuff that you wish they would explore going up to the finale. Never mind. With them pushing this idea that there's a connection between Noah and Eli that's a bit unexplained, at least until the finale, there's another layer. There's just so many layers of things that they could have done to make that ending really pop like it should. And as much as an ending, for me anyway, felt good, it didn't feel as much as a reward as it could have been because they dropped the ball in so many different ways. But overall, when it comes to before the first season, probably the only season, we're being very honest, I feel like the more you reflect on what it could have lived up to when it comes to the finale, it makes you have these mixed feelings where it's like, yes, potential was there, actors needed was there, finale was decent to good, but for 8 episodes, it just delivered mostly filler. The only exception would potentially be the episode. What episode was it? Episodes 5 to 6, I believe, where it actually seemed like it's going to get better, but then unfortunately from there, it went right back down to a tailspin before it's kind of saved itself in episode 10. But point of the matter is, if you have Apple TV Plus, before isn't the worst way to spend your time, especially with each episode only being a half hour. But at the same time, it's not something worth getting Apple TV Plus for. And if you have better things to watch, I don't think this should be anywhere high up on your list.